Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video. And in today's video, I'm going to be predicting the Joshua versus Ngannou fight. If you're new around here though and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So, going into this fight, Joshua is 27-3 with 24 KOs, and Ngannou is 0-1 with no KOs in boxing, and is 17-3 with 12 KOs and 4 submissions in MMA. This fight is a 10-round fight in the heavyweight division. Joshua's last fight was a win via stoppage in round 5 versus Wallen, and Ngannou's last fight was a loss via split decision versus Fury. Joshua is 34 and Ngannou is 37. And to speak about what I've just said there, obviously this is the fight which has been made. It's not really the fight which I suppose a lot of people were expecting. If you said that, I suppose this time last year, I doubt anybody would have been expecting it. But Ngannou made a very creditable account of himself in the Fury fight, and a lot of people thought he won that fight. In my opinion, he probably didn't quite do enough to win, but it was a very close fight, and like I say, he did make a very good account for himself, and to get the knockdown and to look good at certain points, and have Fury hurt at certain points, and be able to still take big shots from Fury and keep coming forwards. It was a very impressive showing, and definitely did create a count for himself in boxing and create a name for himself in boxing. And now he's got this big fight again with Joshua, and Joshua, he's obviously coming off a very impressive victory versus Wallen, and a fight which has most definitely boosted his confidence a lot. And in my opinion, if you look at it and you look at the heavyweight landscape at the moment, obviously we've got other fights which I'm going to speak about on this card in just a moment, but if you look about possible other fights I suppose could have been made for Joshua instead, the Wilder one kind of went out the window, of course, with Parker. And then, I mean, if you look at, Parker, you don't really want that. Hrgovic looked like he wasn't really too bothered about it. It looked like he only really wanted to fight for it if it was for the vacant IBF title. And so, if you look at the available options, Ngannou probably was the best bet. And I think now that Joshua is gaining more confidence and has come off two more impressive performances, one very impressive performance in the Wallen one, you got to think that this probably is a good time to fight this fight, and it's an entertaining fight. And I think there's going to be, difficulties that Joshua's going to have to be aware of with Ngannou, but he's a bit less of an unknown entity boxing-wise than what he was against Fury. And, you can see a little bit more about Ngannou now, but you can see that there's definitely still room for improvements, and I'm sure he's going to come into this fight having improved quite a lot on Ngannou, and it's going to be an entertaining one. And obviously there is still the age gap between the two of them. They're both on the older side a little bit now, to be fair, but they're both in their prime, and or maybe in the latter bits of their prime. But Ngannou, he's very athletic and is built like I suppose like anything. And same with Joshua. They're both going to come in with very well conditioned, and it's going to want to make a good fight, and I'm sure it will be. Also on this card though is Zhang versus Parker for the WBO interim world heavyweight title, in which I think Parker will win via a unanimous decision. I think Parker, the game plan he went into with Wilder was a very impressive game plan. The fact that he really just didn't give Wilder any range or any confidence, or really just smothered him the whole time. It's exactly what you had to do against Wilder, and completely showed up Wilder and showed against his just power, and showed that you can get through the power. And I believe if he can do that against Zhang and just constantly be moving and constantly just I suppose be in his face and not really let him get his work off, he might have to take a few big shots, and there's questions in if he can do that. And he has struggled against fighters like Joyce in the past, Parker, and he's a kind of a similar type of fighter to Zhang to an extent. But I think Parker, now he's got that little bit of a game plan there and has gained a lot of confidence from that fight versus Wilder. I think he can go out and get a decision win. I don't think he's going to be able to stop Zhang, but especially into the later rounds where I'm sure Zhang probably will tire, we can hopefully see a progressive Parker who will just improve, in my opinion, throughout the fight. Also on this card, Madrimov versus Kurbanov for the vacant WBA World Super Welterweight title, in which I think Madrimov will win via split decision. I think it's going to be a very close fight. I don't often give split decision predictions, but like I said, I think this is going to be a very close fight. They're both coming into it off the back of a couple, not amazing performances. I think Madrimov's last fight was an impressive performance, but they've both had difficult performances against sorrow, and so they've both got that similar opponent they like that, which they kind of maybe not just about scraped through, but didn't always have the best of performances between the two. But now we're gonna see them against each other. It's a good fight to make. I think Kurbanov has possibly got. I suppose they're both quite powerful punchers. Madrimov, in my opinion, probably has the better movement. Obviously, he's got that great amateur pedigree, and Kurbanov, he's got that more experience at top level, professional wise, and has beat some quite decent names. And I think, like I say, it's going to be a split decision. I think it's going to be a great fight. I probably would be enjoying to see a rematch of it, but I do think in the end Madrimov will be able to win, like I said, via split decision. And then the final fight, which I'm going to speak about on this great card, probably could have done a whole prediction just for this card alone, but I mean I haven't, and I thought I'd just mention it all on here. But yeah, Bull versus Vargas for the WBC World Featherweight title. I think that Bull will win via TKO in round 10. To an extent, I think Vargas has been maybe getting to the later end of his career, and he has been possibly exposed to an extent. Obviously, he moved up in his last fight against Foster, but he couldn't deal with the explosiveness, the speed, the power, the intensity of that of Foster. And I think Ball is going to be a very similar type of fighter, and he's got a lot of momentum with him. He's the younger fighter. He's a very explosive fighter. He's going to really push the physical pressure, and I don't think Vargas is going to be able to deal with it. And I think Ball, like I mentioned, will be able to get a late stoppage, and that's huge for him getting this opportunity. And then I think, like I mentioned, becoming a world champion is going to be huge for him. And I think he could possibly reign for a long time, but we'll have to wait and see. I am a big fan of Bull, and I will, it's nice to see him getting this opportunity to step up. And like I say, I think he's going to be able to win. Going back to the main event, no, Joshua as a fighter. I mean, I've talked about Joshua a few times on this channel. I don't really want to go into, too in depth of detail again because, everybody to an extent knows what Joshua is about, if you see it from his fights. And of course, he is a huge name, so a lot of people have seen his fights. But what I wanted to mention, of course, the power was there. The power was there for both fighters. They both got the power to be able to knock you out with one punch. That's what makes this entertaining. That's what makes heavyweight boxing entertaining. And Joshua, he can sit down on his shots very nicely, and he is quite accurate at times. I think the accuracy is coming through, and it's getting in improvements. But when you talk about improvements being made, his countering's improving. He's becoming a lot more sharp. He has got good jab. He's not really overcommitting to his shots too much anymore, and I think he is improving as a fighter genuinely. And I think that this technical aspect, this technical side of Joshua, there's been positives, I suppose, that you can take from the couple of fights where he maybe didn't look at his best. I still think they have improved him as a fighter in general, and now we're getting to see maybe him let his hands a bit go again a bit more like he did against Wallin and go back to the body nicely. You need to obviously get the mix of the two, but I think the mix of the two is slowly starting to come, and now he's got a little bit of momentum back against with him. I think he's gonna be a mess to be a force to be reckoned with in this fight, and I think this could be a difficult fight for Ngannou. Obviously, he's going to be coming into it very focused, Joshua, and he's used to this pressure of being the favourite, and yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting fight. But I suppose the negatives about him, I think we'll have to wait and just see how he deals with the physical pressure of that in Ngannou. Wallin is nowhere near as powerful and is nowhere near going to put up as much pressure as that of what Ngannou has, and he hasn't really had to deal with too much of a fighter putting up physical pressure for a little while. Joshua, I suppose if you look back, Usyk not really, Wallin not really. Who else am I thinking of? His past few fights, Hellenius, no. Franklin, no. I suppose Franklin put up a little bit, but if you're really going back to the last time you have physical, powerful pressure, it was realistically against Ruiz, and obviously that didn't really go too well for Joshua, especially not the first time. But we're going to have to see how he deals with that, and if he is going to be able to make the necessary adjustments. Obviously, with the team he's got around him now with Ben Davison, you'd like to think he's going to come in with a good game plan and a game plan which can make adjustments, like I say, if necessary. Ngannou, he is, like as mentioned, a bit less of an unknown identity now in boxing, but he is still very unorthodox and is going to still come with things which you're not going to be able to expect. And so we're going to have to see how Joshua deals with it. Can be a little bit hesitant at times still. The high output isn't always there. He can still be a bit of a slow starter, but I think, like I mentioned, it is improving. He can sometimes, wait a bit too long, can become frustrated. His chin has been tested, like I said, against Ruiz, especially. That was a while ago, but it has been tested. And if that's getting tested against Ruiz, if Ngannou does land a shot, and Ngannou with his unorthodox style and the fact that he can find angles, if he can land a shot, then we never know what can happen. And as Ngannou as a fighter, I mean, I've spoke about him already a bit in this video already, but he won't be bullied. He's got a great chin himself, and he really did take a few big shots against Fury. And obviously, you don't really want to be taking too many big shots, but he did show that he does have a great chin. He's got that self confidence more than ever now. I think he really showed. That self confidence has really come through from the Fury fight, and now he's oozing with confidence. Like I say, he finds the angles well. It's always interesting with MMA fighters when they come over to boxing. You always kind of get to see how they deal with fighting in close, and Ngannou can definitely fight in close and out of mid range. So can Joshua really, but when you go from being in an in close type clinch to then being able to break away, the counters, the timings, the reactions, they're all just natural for an MMA fighter, and Ngannou really showed all of that. And I mean, that's how he got the knockdown in the first place against Fury. That good reactions in close, the good timing, the good angles, and it's all part of MMA. Combat, I suppose, and striking in general, and so it's nice to see that Ngannou has got that. Like I say, he's going to be improving coming into it. He's got that underdog mentality, and he's used to that now. He's got a good jab as well, and does have good, straight shots as well. He's got sharp counters. Like I say, he's very explosive in his own right. Possibly that a bit more than what Joshua can show, that explosive side of him. He changes stance, which is, like I mentioned, something else which is unorthodox about him, and is never really wanting to just stick into one stance for too long. And he is very physical as well, and like I mentioned, very physical. Negatives about him, I mean, he can be a little bit wild, can overcommit a bit less sharp than that of Joshua. Doesn't always cut off the ring the best, and I feel like he possibly, if he'd have cut off the ring better against Fury, possibly could have landed a few bigger shots and not really just let Fury just go on the back foot. He's not as fast. He winds up on his shots a little bit too long. If his opponent doesn't stand and trade, I mean, Fury didn't do that, and Ngannou couldn't really stop him throughout the rest of the fight. And he did tire quite a bit into that fight, and in general, he doesn't really have much defensive movement, head movement. Wasn't really there a lot of the time for Ngannou, and he did get caught, like I say, with some big shots, which he ate and kept coming forwards, like I mentioned. But he's still getting caught with them, and if he does tire and starts getting caught with them, then Joshua, who is more powerful than that of Fury, really on paper, how will that play out? He can struggle a bit against fast movers, like I say, and can be kept at a jab a bit as well, and can be kept at a range. Obviously, he's explosive and uses that explosiveness early on in the fight, but like I mentioned, when he tires, he can be kept at a jab, and that's what Fury did very much so. Joshua is the favourite for this fight, and I think that Joshua will win via unanimous decision. I don't see him being able to stop Ngannou. If it is, it's going to be very late into the fight, and it will really make a statement if he does. But like I mentioned, I think Ngannou is going to be very tough. But I think Joshua, the fundamentals of his boxing game and the technical ability he has, and the fact that he has faced so many opponents now that will be, you know, so many different styles. I'd really like to think that with the fact he's improving, gaining confidence, I would really like to think that we can outbox Ngannou here and put on a better display than that of Fury. I don't think he's going to be doing anything, quite as silly as what Fury was doing when Fury was committing in early on. But like I say, I feel like he's going to be able to get a decision win and not stop him. Then who he goes on to fight, I mean, the winner of Fury Usyk, you kind of have to think that would be the case. But there'll probably be a rematch between the two of them. So if he wants to keep active, it seems like Joshua is enjoying keeping active at the moment. Zhang vs Parker winner could be a great fight. Hrgovic is still, about available. Wilder, you never know, could be an option still. And so I think there's fights there. Same with Ngannou, really. I mean, that Ferreira PFL fight is always going to be there, and it seems like that's going to be the next fight nonetheless, whatever happens with this. So I think Ngannou is going to end up fighting that anyway. But I'd like to see Ngannou, even if he does lose this fight, still make a return for boxing because he's entertaining, and he's proven that he can fight in boxing now. And yeah, that is it for today's video. I hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did indeed like the video, subscribe if you are new, and thanks for watching.